Conflict in relationships is inevitable. Even with friends and family, keeping peace can be challenging, and it's even harder with those who are against us. Exactly. This has been true throughout human history. Where there are people, there is conflict and violence. This was especially true in the time of Jesus, when Roman forces occupied the land of Israel. In his teachings, Jesus presents a radical way for his followers to pursue peace amidst conflict and restore even the most difficult relationships. Jesus, as an Israelite, believed that God's wisdom for relationships was found in the covenant laws given to ancient Israel. So in these teachings, Jesus quotes one of those laws and then reveals the deeper wisdom behind it. Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.'" In Israel, an oath was a kind of promise where someone would swear by God to do what they said. For example, if you wanted to borrow money, you could swear by God that you would pay it back. Exactly. And you could trust me because Israel's covenant laws required me to keep my oaths. So oaths were meant to prevent disputes. That's the idea, but they could also be manipulated. What if I swore by God's temple instead of by God himself to repay you? Well, I know the law requires you to keep your oath, so it would still be a deal. But I didn't actually swear by God, just by his temple, so I'm not really bound to it. So you're tricking me into trusting you? Exactly. That's why Jesus rejects all of this and says, just don't make oaths at all, neither by God nor by anything else in his creation. Never make a promise to anyone? Not exactly. When you make a promise, don't use God's name as a means to manipulate others. Exactly. Jesus teaches, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Being a true peacemaker requires a deep commitment to honesty and integrity. I can see how this applies if I started the conflict, but what if someone else starts it? Well, the next example directly addresses that. Jesus refers to the Torah. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This is the well-known law of retaliation. Right, if someone harms me, I have the right to harm them back. It almost sounds like a justification for revenge. Actually, this law was meant to prevent excessive retaliation, ensuring that punishment matches the harm done and goes no further. So this law helps maintain peace by controlling our instinct for revenge. Yes, and Jesus takes this principle even further, telling his followers, do not repay evil with evil. So, no retaliation at all. Exactly. Instead, his followers should prioritize peace over revenge. But if people get away with doing wrong, that won't create peace. You can't just stand by and do nothing. Wait. Jesus doesn't call for inaction. Instead, he teaches a bold and creative approach to confronting evil, one that is nonviolent and has the power to create peace. What does that look like? Jesus offers 3 examples from his time. First, he says, if someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to them as well. In the Roman world, a slap on the right cheek with the back of the right hand was a symbolic act of dominance and a deep humiliation. But instead of retaliating, Jesus tells his followers to stand firm and offer the other cheek. This action compels your aggressor to strike with an open right hand, treating you as an equal. So it forces them to recognize your dignity as a fellow human being. Exactly. Even if it comes at a personal cost. Next, Jesus says, if someone takes you to court and demands your shirt, give them your coat as well. In ancient Israel, the law prohibited taking a poor person's coat because it also served as their blanket at night. But a ruthless person could find a loophole by demanding their shirt instead. Right, so Jesus proposes an unexpected response. Don't just give your shirt, offer your coat too. But wouldn't that leave you completely exposed? Exactly. Jesus is making a bold statement. The idea is to expose the injustice by responding with radical generosity. The third example Jesus gives is, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. Back in Jesus' time, Roman soldiers had the right to force civilians to carry their gear for up to 1 mile. That was both humiliating and oppressive. So Jesus says, don't just carry it 1 mile, go 2. The first mile you are treated like a servant, but when you willingly go further, you reclaim your dignity by turning the situation into an act of kindness. Wait, you're saying to treat an enemy and oppressor like a friend? That's exactly it. Jesus teaches that radical generosity has the power to disrupt the cycle of control and even transform enemies into allies. And this brings us to the final law Jesus references. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Jesus quotes an ancient biblical commandment, love your neighbor. But then he contrasts it with a common phrase that many Israelites had added, and you may hate your enemy.